What was the Please Stop School presentation that you witnessed? Was in a video/filmmaking class in high school. One group of guys did a parody of those Gatorade commercials where the athlete's sweat is colored like Gatorade, but it was a sweaty guy jerking off. Apparently there was a Gatorade cum shot, but the teacher just turned that shit off immediately before it got that far. For 8th grade talent show, 2 girls sang the Mr. Bladell song. Mr. Bladell was a good-looking, recently college-graduated teacher that basically was about how cute they thought he was. Even then, it was incredibly uncomfortable, and I remember looking at the teacher's face and he didn't seem very amused. I was in 4th grade and a girl in my class did an oral report on Martin Luther King and how he was a hero for freeing the slaves. Macron / _ Macron. The one where my school got tripped off by paying a guy who claimed to be on SpongeBob to come talk to us about drugs. He did look kind of like Tom Kenny, I guess. For a public speaking class in college, we had to give a persuasive speech. One kid did his speech about porn. If he had had a legitimate argument, like sex work is real work, or porn has a negative effect on a person's self-image, the speech would have been fine. We were all mature adults. But all he did was list the different kinds of porn he liked, in detail, with visual aids. The professor stopped him after a few minutes, and asked him to explain what he wanted to persuade the audience about. He answered, "Porn is good." I was in a Japanese film class for a credit I needed, and the final project was some open-ended paper where you got to choose the topic, and our Japanese-born teacher told us some story about a creepy neckbeard who did his on Japanese porn and how no one should do anything like that. Anyways, on the day it was due, the creepiest neckbeard stereotype I've ever seen, who was in my class, presented his long-ass cringe presentation on Japanese porn in the class that no one wanted to hear, already knowing the teacher has seen this shit before and wasn't about it at all. Edit, just to clarify, his main talking point was about how Japanese people have a greater appreciation for big boobs than Americans. It wasn't some academic treatise on sexual norms or gender expectations in porn or anything. During nursing school, a guy decided to use My Little Pony figures as props to a seminar room of about 100 people. He told the class that he would refer to himself as his pony name for the duration. Don't remember what it was. Also, not that this is relevant, but he wore a black leather trench coat and it was pretty hot in the room, yet he never took it off. Cringe. Edit, he wasn't a student, he came in to do a talk about epilepsy and his experience with healthcare. We got to review them at the end and I gave him a good score because he actually had a lot of interesting things to say about his condition, even if it was cringy. Not a presentation, but during our school assemblies we often had student performers, which were usually musically inclined individuals or theater kids doing a scene/monologue. One kid decided to do a stand-up comedy routine about a girl giving him a blow job. So awkward, and the principal had to interrupt him. In 1984, when I was in 6th grade, each class did a winter concert. The 8th grade football team sang I'm Dreaming of a Black Christmas in blackface. Green Bay, Wisconsin, Bayview Middle School. Edit, it was 1984, not 1985. In history class, we all had to do a presentation about some sort of injustice in the world. One kid chose a prison camp for his topic. All his PowerPoint slides were photos of men being stripped, chained, whipped, sodomized, and forced to give blowjobs. We were 13. Edit, yes, his project was about Abu Ghraib. Compared to some other stories in here, this is minor, but it was a group project for one of my literature classes. There were 5 people in this group. According to the rubric for this assignment, everyone was supposed to have equal speaking parts. One of the members in this group would just not stop talking. Half of their presentation was just her talking, and she went on about each of her slides for like 5 minutes. The rest of her group members had like 1 or 2 slides each, and she had like 5 or 6. She would also interject into the other group members' parts to add her opinions. The look on my professor's face screamed, "Just shut up already," every time she talked. Student gave a presentation on the need to strap laser beams to deer heads that trigger sonic waves so that the deer are detracted from crossing highways. Context: wasn't the grading teacher, but was asked to observe or supervise the teacher. This was their final assignment for the school year and constituted for a large percentage of their final grade. Theme was supposed to be on how to solve a problem youth is facing, X. How to be a solutionary. Student was in 10th grade. In my high school current events class, 2 freshman girls got a little lost in their research about ISIS. They somehow connected this terrorist group to the magic bullet theory used in the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Me and the few other seniors were holding back laugh to the entire presentation. An anti-bullying campaign. They spent most of the presentation explaining different types and ways to bully/harass people. Bullying increased in school and everything got 10 times worse now that the students were more educated on the subject. In college, someone was doing a presentation on Nelson Mandela and kept referring to Africans as African Americans. It's me. I did this. I cringe about it to this day, nearly 20 years later. I was 16 and in high school. My high school was going to do a spring talent show. I wanted to be in the talent show and show off my talents. The problem was, my actual talents are not ones that I could show off at a talent show. So I decided to try singing. I have never sung in my life. I have never had voice lessons. I was in my prime weeb stage and chose an anime song to sing. I didn't know any actual Japanese, I had just memorized the lyrics from hearing the song so many times. Luckily I didn't make it past auditions, but several people saw an overweight girl in a Sailor Moon shirt try to sing Butterfly despite having never done any singing or voice training ever in her life. Nearly 20 years later, and remembering it keeps me awake at night. In high school a student died in a car accident where she was driving. There was no record that stated she was distracted by her phone or anything, but the school decided to have an assembly shortly after talking about distracted driving and using her as an example. Telling the whole school she'd be alive if she was doing what she was supposed to. A teacher asked us to compare the cells in our body to anything we can think of. Obviously some students compared the parts of the human cell to schools, jails, libraries, normal things, right? Well, this one student that sits next to me had a different idea. These were group projects, keep in mind. This girl managed to strong-arm her group to compare the human cell to the infamous webcomic Homestuck. She did this successfully. Not only did I feel dirty, but her group felt worse for having their names on it. This was a Spanish class in college, and I think the assignment was something like talk about your best friend or some such, just kind of a softball assignment so you could practice using the vocabulary. And one classmate's friend was evidently a friend with benefits. Not at school. But when I was in high school my church youth group went to this church camp. For those uninitiated, Thursday nights are normally the really emotional nights. Well, this camp was different. Thursday night the guy that started the camp comes on stage and begins giving a bunch of middle school and high school boys and girls the sex talk. All I remember from that night was the quote, "Just because there's a hole there doesn't mean you have to stick something in it." My sophomore year we had to make a presentation about any person that made an impact on the world that was inspirational. Someone chose Hitler. This was my presentation, and it was about the science behind how Mountain Dew can dissolve a mouse. This was in 4th grade. Needless to say I got some parent complaints. Once in college I was in my Spanish class and our desks were in a U shape, I was on the very end of the U. So some guy is giving a presentation, he is standing behind a podium. Gets a boner. I'm on the side and no one is opposite so I can see it. Dude just kept going on and on and on. I think he was trying to outlast the boner. He ended up getting it down before he had to sit down. Was like a 10 minutes presentation that only needed to be like 3 minutes though. Edit, presentation was in Spanish too. Environmental science. For our final project in the class we were allowed to talk about. Dude decides to do his project on global cooling. Buddy was up there for 7 minutes explaining to the class how the Earth has been getting colder and colder, and how it's eventually going to cause problems to other species. Teacher was really passionate about this class and you could say her squirming in her seat the whole way through the presentation. Whole thing was a big WTF. His sources were online forums. In speech 101 in college we had to pick a children's book and voice act each character. That was it. That was the entire assignment. Well, one student decided to take it to the next level. He chose a Berenstain Bear book and decided to not only do voice acting for every single one of the characters, but also act it out. It was physically uncomfortable to watch this guy scramble around the room and pretend to be bears and other animals. It was not well done. It was awful. Late to this but, grade 12 advanced placement English. We were assigned books then had to do a presentation on a topic somehow related to it. The book I was assigned was The Stranger by Camus, so I presented on existentialism in literature. One girl was assigned Animal Farm. She started her presentation on kinds of tractors used in farming. She hadn't read the book and assumed it was about actual animal husbandry. It was a very long presentation. The teacher had to actually hide her face. This was in fucking college. Our bio finals were to present on any topic that was related to biology. A group was presenting on types of protection for sex. Not once did they refer to any body parts or fluids by their scientific names. So, yes, they literally had dick, cum, and pussy on slides and read off them. Everyone kept glancing over at our professor, who had this look like he was just constantly cleaning his glasses because he couldn't believe what he was witnessing. They got Kentucky fucked on grading. Some guy in my class, about 12-13 years old, confused heroic and erotic. The teacher asked if he really read an erotic book and he said yes, as the student watched in disbelief. Took the teacher 30 seconds to catch up the misunderstanding. In 4th year university we had a year-long seminar course of 15-ish students. Our big end-of-year project was to give a 3-hour lecture on one of the historical figures we'd studied. One guy got up there and was so nervous he blasted through his content in less than an hour, without hardly taking a breath. Nobody could understand him, the professor didn't step in to tell him to slow down, and he was sweating so profusely his shirt was soaked through. I felt really bad for him, but oh god. It was my sophomore year English class, this kid who was reading his essay in front of the class and started to stumble over some of the words. The teacher recognized the words and found the essay the kid plagiarized and started helping him read it. The kid didn't understand what was happening and just thanked the teacher and kept reading. Edit, holy crap. Gold? Thank you. I don't have time to reply to everyone but here's a few more details for clarity. This was in like 2004, the teacher found the essay on the internet. He gave the kid a day to try again. The kid was stumbling over the words because they were big ones he'd evidently never seen before. Everything else is fuzzy since it was over 15 years ago. Cheers. Thanks for the upvotes. I've told this on Reddit a few times but it's truly unforgettable. Smart kid in the class was giving a deeply sourced PowerPoint presentation on religion in Europe. He opens up his files, proceeds to click on his project named Enga. He says clearly I wasn't really paying any attention when I named my file. He gives the presentation. He stutters and sweats bullets while we watch in utter disbelief. The word is sitting there on the top of the file heading the whole time. This was during a study abroad semester while attending a cultural communication class. He had to rot in his own shit after that. When I was a 9th grade student, we had to present the poems we made in English class. Most people wrote about embracing their culture, loving their friends, etc. And then there was that one kid who recited a lifestyle poem which compared fat people to beached whales and said that people who don't work out will die before they're 20. Us. We were to make a film retelling the story of Hamlet. It was supposed to be 5 minutes. Being the creative nutcases we made a 22-minute film complete with a commercial break which made fun of prior books we had to read. Ophelia was a Jersey Shore whore who refused to take her Prozac, Polonius was a perverted Greek philosopher, and Hamlet was a depressed emo. Sword fights were video game based, with Mortal Kombat themes. We presented it to the class and were cut off after 5 minutes. We received an A.